Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Handicap Movers and Shakers. It's Tuesday, so that means all morning I've been looking over the week's results and seeing who's got a new mark, who's gone up, who's gone down. Firstly, I have to say thank you very much for the really positive and encouraging feedback on the first effort. Hopefully I'll improve as we go along, but it was nice to see that many of you enjoyed it and thought it was a bit different. So I'll endeavour to keep the quality improving and keep some interesting bits of information coming if I can. So like I said, I have a few for this week, a couple of new entries, a few going up and one going down. So we'll get straight on with it. The first one is a new entry. They're always the really interesting ones, new entries, horses that you've perhaps seen lurking around in novices that haven't yet had a mark. This one is actually a bit different in that she's won both of her hurdle starts, and it's a mare of Mark Wolf's called Ruby Island. Now, she brought a really good level of bumper form into her hurdling. She duly won first time up over hurdles at Ayr, and then carried a penalty into a mare's novice at Wetherby this weekend. She was really well supported in the betting. I actually napped her on the SBK betting podcast. She was 15-8 at the time, which anyone that knows me would know that's skinny enough for me, and she was absolutely smashed into 13-8 on favourite, which when you're tipping is a horrible situation to be in, to be honest, because if she wins, of course she was meant to win. She was a 13-8 on favourite, and if she gets beat, you look like a right plum. Thankfully she got the business done, but it wasn't all plain sailing. I mean, her jumping was really slick. That really impressed me, but coming around the home turn, she looked to be in a spot of bother. You know, Jamie Hamilton was just niggling away on her, and Jane de Burley, the sort of other mare that brought winning form to the race, was going quite nicely up in front. But as soon as I hit the straight, she quickly got alongside Jane de Burley, pulled away, and from there on there was only going to be one winner. She looked to me to be green enough and just looking around and flicking her ears and not doing a whole lot in front. Going down to the last, she looked to have it all sewn up. You were just wondering if anything would come out of the pack. But once she landed from the back of the last and Jamie Hamilton sort of grabbed hold of her and went to teach her a little bit, she really quickened up smartly and was very powerful through the line. I'm convinced this is a mare that's going to be even better over 2.5 miles. She's been given an opening mark of 119, which on the balance of her form is perhaps fair enough. But I think if you watch that race back, she's doing it very easily. She's a decent level of bumper form. I think her jumping is a really good attribute, and I can see her taking a much higher order over hurdles than a mark of 119 would suggest. The second one that's got a new mark, and it's a hurdling mark because this horse has been chasing. Now, full disclosure, this horse, Mariko Devassi, is a full-blown cliff horse of mine. If you've watched anything I've done or read anything I've written, it's a chance he's featured because I love the horse. Chasing just hasn't worked out from this year, unfortunately. I was convinced he was going to make a better chaser than he had hurdler, but after a poor round of jumping at Wetherby, he sort of regressed from there. He did finish second at Wetherby despite jumping badly, but his last effort at Hereford last Monday, where he wore cheek pieces, he just never really looked interested from the start, and chasing is clearly not for him. But he has been given a hurdling mark of 123, and he's entered over 2 mile 40 at Oxford this Saturday, and I'm convinced, and I've been for some time, there's a big engine in this horse. I mean, if you take his Wetherby run over fences where he didn't jump at all well, he was beaten just a length trying to give £7 to Not Long Till May. Sorry, £4 till Not Long Till May. Now, Not Long Till May is 142 rates over fences. Fences have clearly improved him. There's no doubting that. So I'm not saying that's a literal line of form, but it gives you some idea as to the sort of level Mariko Devassi and the level of ability he's got. Back over hurdles, he won at Doncaster. Russian Ruler was 7 lengths back. He was getting £7. He's 123 rated. Huntingdon, he tipped up when probably just headed by Balco Coastal at the time, although I'm not convinced that he was completely done with, although as I have to admit, I do look at this horse through slightly rose-tinted spectacles. But regardless of that, he would definitely have finished in front of the eventual second horse, PJB, who's 127 rated, and almost certainly in front of the third horse, Black Poppy, who's 119 rated and was receiving £7. So a mark of 123, this horse has definitely got more natural ability than that mark. It's a slight concern, even to me, his biggest fan, that in cheek pieces at Hereford on Monday, he didn't really raise a gallop. Now, I'm hoping that's just because fences have frightened him, he's not enjoyed it, and he's slightly sulking. I will be more than likely following him in again on Saturday at Uttoxeter over hurdles. At some point, I'm going to have to draw a line on this horse, but there's definitely an engine there. He's still a young horse. Tom Simmons, his trainer, is a really smart guy, puts a lot of thought into what he does, and I have plenty of faith that they'll find the key to this horse. And if they do, a mark of 123 is well below this horse's ability. Then the final new entry is a more classic new entry, in that it's a horse that's had 3 hurdle runs and has now got an opening mark. And that horse is the Philip Hobbs trained Farsight, who enters on a mark of 103. His latest effort, he was settled mid-division. Now, this is a lesson I think is perhaps quite important to stress. I often speak to people and hear from people that will sort of quote a in-running comment from the Racing Post results section as if it's a fact. Now, there's no doubt in the Racing Post probably do attract the best journalists, analysts in the game to a degree, but it's still someone's opinion, and opinions vary. And I thought it was interesting that the Racing Post comment said took keen hold. Watching the race, to me, I don't think Farsight takes a keen hold at all. He has previously, but I think on this occasion he was pretty relaxed, really. Tom O'Brien had a pretty long rein. You would expect a horse that was pulling the jockey to have a very short rein, have a good hold of his head, and his head carriage looks steady and it looks straight. You know, if a horse is pulling, you'll quite often see them throwing their head around, fighting against the rider, or you might see that their head is sort of cocked to one side or the other, where the jockey is trying to slightly just turn them a little bit and sit against them. I couldn't see any of that with Farsight. I don't think he was keen at all. I think he was pretty settled, and I think that's a big improvement on his first 2 efforts. Now, he finished 5th, but the first 4 home were all ridden prominently. Like I said, he was settled out the back. He wasn't given a vigorous ride when the first 4 pulled away. It was very typical of a horse having its 3rd run in novice hurdles, waiting for that handicap mark. And I thought it was quite a promising run, the way he stayed on quite well through to the line without being really hard ridden by Tom O'Brien. His single best piece of hurdling form was probably his initial effort at Exeter, where he was beaten 17 lengths by Time for a Tune, who's rated 132. Sorry. Now, I'm not suggesting you take that literally, because Time for a Tune was a very easy winner on that occasion, but I think it gives a inclination to the fact that this horse is probably better than 103. He did win his bumper. He's clearly got a bit of an engine. He was pretty keen early on. He was ridden quite prominently on that first time behind Time for a Tune, but pulled quite hard. He was dropped right out the back on his second run, and then was ridden sort of with a little bit less restraint, but still sort of off the back of the middle on this last start. I think if he's given a slightly more prominent ride when going into handicaps, I think off a mark of 103, he can be found a winning opportunity. I've added him to my tracker, and I'd suggest you do the same with yours. And then we come to a couple of horses that are going up in the handicap, and the first one is Monbeg Genius, who's gone up £5 for a win at Chepstow last Wednesday. Now, he was valued for a lot further than the official 1 1/4 length winning margin. He was travelling much the best against his main market rival Rioja up the home straight. Really big, powerful jumps at 3 out and 2 out saw him comfortably account for that rival. And then going down to the last, I think John Joe Jr. thought he had the race well won. He powered down quite dramatically, which is something I'm not always keen to see, but powered down dramatically, didn't then find a great distance, a great shot to the last, and slightly sort of flopped over it. And the runner-up, who was gathering quite a head of steam, briefly looked like he might head him. Took a few strides for Monbeg Genius to get organised. He's a big, strapping chaser, but once he did, he quickened up quite nicely at the back of 3 miles around Chepstow. I think that takes a bit of doing, and quickly got the race put to bed and ran through the line to be a ready winner. So he's up £5 now to a mark of 137. That's not going to stop him. He's definitely better than that. Just now, if he goes into large field handicaps, there'd perhaps be a slight concern in that the biggest field he's running is a 7-runner chase. So he's going to have to grow up and sort of take another step forward in terms of his racing aptitude. But I think he's definitely got an engine. A mark of 137 shouldn't stop him. And John Joe O'Neill is a dab hand at finding promising opportunities for this type of horse. The second horse that has gone up in the handicap is actually the horse that finished runner-up to Monbeg Genius, and that's the Jeremy Scott trained Stormy Flight. He was rapidly closing at the end, having looked like he was going to get sort of quite badly outpaced and detached, heading towards 3 out. Now, this was his first run after a wind-up, and we often talk about the second run after the wind-up being the one where the horse finds the most improvement, because often the first run after the wind-up can help them realise that they can actually breathe. You know, when they're going into the red zone at the end of the race, horses that have a breathing problem, obviously that's a pretty uncomfortable situation to be in. They're trying to get more oxygen and they can't because of a respiratory issue. I thought that was exactly the case with this horse. You know, like I said, going to 3 out, he looked to be struggling, was going up and down the spot. Lorcan Williams wasn't being overly hard on him. Jumped 3 out, Lorcan Williams grabbed hold of him and got quite serious with him, and he picked up really well, and he just seemed to find all the way to the line. To me, it looked like a horse that was perhaps enjoying being able to breathe, enjoying being able to finish his race off on pretty good ground, and he did run home well. So he's up £1 now to a mark of 115. This is just his third chase start. He's won and been placed over hurdles off marks in the low 120s, and I think he can be found a winning opportunity. That said, if Monbeg Genius and Stormy Flight were to face off again, even on these revised terms where Stormy Flight would be £4 better off for a 1 1/4 length defeat, effectively that should see him reverse the form, but I would still be, all things being equal, in the camp of Monbeg Genius, because I do think that he was value for more than the winning margin. But getting back to Stormy Flight, up to a mark of 115, just £1 higher. Jeremy Scott is a really shrewd trainer, and I think second run, this horse will take a lot of confidence from that effort at Chepstow, and he's another one that should be added to your tracker. The final horse that's gone up in the handicap is another Jeremy Scott trained chaser, and it's Sizable Sam, who won at Exeter last week. He travelled really well up the home straight in what looked like being a match between him and the runner-up, First Lord de Coué, who's a really solid yardstick rate of 132. I mean, he just finishes runner-up all the time, but he runs a race. I thought Sizable Sam was going to win more comfortably than he ended up doing. He had First Lord de Coué's measure pretty much all the way up the home straight at Exeter, and then a sloppy jump at the last just gave the runner-up a chance. But again, Lorcan Williams gathered him up. Took a moment to get him organised, but once he did, he soon put the race to bed and finished very powerfully through the line. He's now up £3 to a mark of 132, and that's not going to stop him, I don't think. Particularly, I think this horse will stay further than this 3-mile trip. He could look at perhaps the Devon National. He goes very well right-hand, and he's got good form at Exeter. 132 would put him probably just about off top weight or very close to it, which might not be ideal, but I think there's more stamina in this horse than 3 miles, and I think if he's given a thorough stamina test on a right-handed track, which looks essential, he can defy this £3 raise. And then the final one is one horse who's gone down in the handicap, and that's Raya Time, who's a 10-year-old now, but he finished 4th, beating 8 lengths at Huntingdon last week in a Class 3 0 to 130 handicap hurdle over 2 miles. He's at 10 years old still looked to travel with a good amount of zest in the early stages. He looked to have his enthusiasm before getting outpaced. But stayed on, I thought, quite nicely to the line. He didn't turn it in. He kept on going, albeit he was never going to get back to the 3 in front of him. Now, I mean, he's £16 lower over hurdles than he is over fences. And that is something you could get quite excited about, but I think it's actually irrelevant because he's clearly, at 10 years of age, not as good as he was when he got that mark of 137. But what is relevant, I think, is that he's now down to a mark of 121, and crucially that means that he can run in 0 to 120 handicap. So he can come down yet another grade because there's an allowance of £2. If you're rated 121 or 122, you can run off top weight in 0 to 120 handicaps. And I think that could just mean that his rookie trainer, Ben Brookhouse, can find this horse an opportunity. Ben has yet to have a winner, but he's been going along quite well with a limited number of runners. Raya Time is an older horse. I thought he still showed plenty of zest, and this mark of 121 can see him be found an opportunity in a lower grade, and he's been competing for quite some time, and he can get the job done. So that wraps up episode 2 of Handicap Movers and Shakers. If you see anything now in this 7 days that you think is interesting and you want my opinion on their handicap mark, or ask why they've been given such a mark up or down, then drop a message in the comments below. As ever, please do like and share this video to anyone you think might be interested, and if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button on the YouTube video so you can be alerted to when the next video comes out. I'll hopefully be back tomorrow with a From the Steward's Room episode 2. That will go live at Wednesday about 6 o'clock. And until next week, enjoy your week's punting, enjoy your week's racing, and I'll see you again.